Hi, guys. This is Tom Sinclair, that VidBlaster Guy. Welcome to the show. We're glad to have you. We are on the air on Tuesday, September 25th, 2012, and we've got a great show planned for you. I'm delighted that you've stopped by and have taken time out of your afternoon if you're in the States, or if you're overseas, might be capping off your evening. But we're glad to have you here. Now remember, that VidBlaster Guy, we kind of have a theme to each show. Generally, we're talking about talk show broadcasting or church broadcasting or sports broadcasting. But there are a couple of things that all three of those subjects have in common. And one of those things is audio. And especially for talk shows, but certainly for churches and sports too. If you don't have audio, or if your audio's not good, then your audience is going to lose out and you're going to lose your audience. So our guest today, coming up in just a minute, is Mike Phillips. Now, you may know Mike from Computers 2K Now. He's one of the hosts on that show. It's a Sunday morning show, Sunday morning, 9 a.m. Eastern, computers2know.com. Very popular show. We'll get 8,000 to 10,000 hits every Sunday morning. And Mike and I are going to chat about audio, so I hope you'll if you're watching live, you'll jump into the chat room so that you can get all those audio questions queued up for Mike. And I've got a couple of the folks who have emailed me that we'll work on too. But let me remind you too about that VidBlaster Guy. Part of our purpose is to prove the case that one guy with one PC can do one pretty decent broadcast. And remember, our goal is one guy, one PC, one awesome broadcast. And we're getting there. But it is a learning curve even for that VidBlaster Guy. So if you've got a room full of PCs out there, you can throw all of them away except one. You only will need one to do an awesome broadcast with VidBlaster. So with no more of this ado, let me bring in the audio guy. And hang on one second here. See if we can get him dialed in just right. And it's Mike Phillips. Mike, have I got you there?
I think so.
Hey!
Looks good so far.
All right, very good. As we were getting ready for the show, it was really kind of funny. Mike said, "There's an echo." Well, every time I tried to stream, after about 1 or 2 seconds, pretty quick, there was a perfect echo of the show. And I'm unplugging.
High quality echo.
Thank you. Thank you. Mike has been working with me for weeks to get my audio dialed in, and we're getting really, really close.
We have the best echoes on the internet.
Yes, we did. And I'm unplugging cables and I'm configuring things and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, it's got to be the worst of the worst. And then Mike says, "Have you got a browser window open maybe with this show streaming?" Well, of course, that's what it was. So that's the intro to the audio guy, the one that figures out the audio. Mike.
But in all fairness to Tom, the reason that it was not even more immediately apparent is because the echo was very quick. The latency between the time I spoke and the time that I heard the echo coming back through Skype was very, very short. I've never heard one that short, and that is to the stream, to the CDN provider, to their credit. It's really, really low latency, and stunningly so, quite candidly.
Well, we will give a shout out to the streamer, and we don't get any credits or benefits from them, but I think they do a good job, and that's benefit enough, and it's decast.com. They're very reasonably priced, and other than screw-ups on my end, they're doing their job. So
you're never supposed to admit those on the air, Tom. If you don't tell your mistakes, then people will think you're an expert.
If I don't tell my mistakes, then they might elect me president.
No.
So
no comment.
We're not going to go there. This is not the political show that you've always wanted to have. No, I do want to talk about audio, and you made the statement that went viral on the internet about 5 or 6 months ago. That was just absolutely, as these statements are, short, concise, has tons of meaning buried behind it, and that is audio is not important. And you've gotten more mail, I'm sure, about that one, and more people that have picked up on it and run with it and twisted it and turned it every which way. But audio is critical.
Well, obviously, everyone knows that it was a sarcastic comment.
Right. No.
Okay.
Indeed. Yes. Yes.
I've hit a couple of people who did not. One guy overseas wanted to take me to task. He said, "What do you mean audio is not important?" He said, "My whole show is audio. What do you not know anything?"
That's right. Well, I was working with some guys on a football broadcast Friday night, and for the first half of the game, we had no crowd audio, but the announcers were doing their announcer thing. And then at halftime, we just tossed a mic on a cord out the window, and brought in some crowd noise. And boy, it was really made all the difference in the world.
And that's a little trick that a lot of people don't know. By the way, Amnon is saying you need to crank up your VidBlaster input or your output to decast. They say the stream audio is a little low if you can.
Okay, let's see if that helps.
He said, "There you go."
All right.
But that's an exact, perfect illustration of the kinds of tricks and techniques that you have to learn about audio to make it a professional presentation. Because if you sit there and watch this game and hear little or no crowd noise, it's very awkward sounding, because when you're sitting at that game live watching it, the crowd noise is all around you. So the video experience in no way resembles the live experience if you don't know to throw this microphone out there. If you go to a major ball game and look around, not only will you see cameras, you will see microphones placed throughout the facility to capture that noise. A perfect example, watch a NASCAR race. Watch how whenever a camera 1 flips to camera 2 and the car rides by that camera, you hear the sound of that engine going right by that car. Whenever the race is over and people are clapping and jumping up and down and screaming and hollering, you can hear the sound, and that adds to the experience. But those are the little things that you learn over time.
Well, and those are huge things. I mean, really, having been through it and realized the difference, it's the difference between being there as a deaf person and being there with hearing. It really is. Holy cow. Yep. So let's for folks that don't know you and don't know your background, give me just a nutshell of where you came from and why audio caught with you. Why did audio become a passion?
I have a very checkered past, and
well, you don't have to go through the whole thing.
Where this is somehow where I ended up, but the relevant part is that I grew up in the radio business. My father owned a radio station in a little small town in North Carolina. So having been quite fascinated with how that worked and so forth, I even as a teenager got involved in the engineering aspects of it. And with that audio introduction, then I was also tangentially involved in the music business, so I got involved in the recording industry, got involved in with microphones, recorders, and I've done all sorts of things with regard to technical maintenance. I've built actual mixers and consoles for radio stations. I've put a radio station on the air from the ground up. So I've been around the technology my entire life, and I was doing it because I love it. I enjoy it. It's my hobby. I don't play golf. I don't go to NASCAR races. I'm not into sports. So that's my hobby. That's what I've enjoyed doing. Unfortunately, because of some life events, I sort of had to gravitate away from the audio business for the last few years. I got out of the radio business in about 1980, technically 84, but I was not able to get away from it until 87 because people still were hiring me on a contract basis to do some engineering work until I finally shut that down. But all of a sudden, the internet broadcasting business industry snuck up on me, because all radio and TV are is bandwidth. So at some point, this bandwidth became viable over the internet. Theoretically, I guess, 2007, 2008, when enough people had fast enough connections to be able to watch credible video, hear credible audio over the internet. So I guess I was about 2 years behind, and the way it happened was Amnon and Spencer on Computers 2K Now said, "Hey, we're going to put Computers 2K Now on the internet with video." I had never seen that done on a local basis before. I mean, I had seen the websites like the TV station stream, things like that, but that was very expensive to do, very hard to do. But whenever Spencer grabbed a webcam and went with a computer over to the radio station where they were doing the show to do the streaming over Ustream at that time, before all the ads made them unusable, then I caught the bug again. So this bug that I'd had up through the mid 80s all of a sudden has grabbed me again, and it's been kind of no turning back. But as I got involved in it, I noticed that a lot of people were spending a lot of time, money, and effort to get the video just right. And the audio was terrible. I mean, it was just terrible. Now, I'm a self-confessed audio snob. I won't listen to things that a lot of other people will. That's just the way the cookie crumbles. That's like an accomplished musician. Accomplished musician can't listen to someone play chopsticks on a piano. It's just too painful. So I don't know how accomplished I am, but just to draw the parallel, there are some things that I listen to, and when I hear them, I just can't keep listening to it, and other people don't even notice. So I just decided that I would try to help as many people as I could improve their audio, and I've made myself available, and quite a few people have availed themselves of that resource. I've been glad to do that. It's becoming a little bit more than I can handle, so I'm going to kind of have to pull back a little bit, but that's okay. Just everything in time, and I'm glad to help as much as I can.
You're victims of your own success, indeed.
Well, you know, it's kind of like the Computers 2K Now thing. People say, what are you doing to grow the show? How are you building your audience? We're not doing any of that. We're just a bunch of old guys having fun. And yes, you did say that.
Not today.
And, but it's true, and we're having a blast doing it. In fact, we were doing this Computers 2K Now show, in essence, like a Google Hangout before there was a Google Hangout. A bunch of us get together. We've got multiple video inputs to the program. We've got the mixer, the audio with mix minus feeds. I mean, it's in, if I may say so, very well done. Is it the same as someone with a $200,000 studio and a $25,000 TriCaster? Nope, not the same thing. Not intended to be, never will be. It's all self-funded. There's very little external support. Some external support by that old VidBlaster guy, because we work together on these things. And but it's all for fun. I mean, we're not trying to create a business around this show. And the beautiful part about that is it takes all the pressure off.
Well, one of the things that really has appealed to me about Computers 2K Now is that it's very much like a small town coffee shop or restaurant on Sunday morning that fills up with the local guys that come in for a cup of coffee and an egg biscuit or whatever and chat. And they'll sit there for a couple hours talking about all the subjects of the day. I mean, we've got a restaurant like that in my little town of Fairhope. And if you want to know the latest gossip, that's where you go. And this is just like a huge virtual 8,000 member Sunday morning breakfast. And
well, we are trying to eat on the air a little less, but it's a challenge.
Well, it works. I think that's the appeal to it. It's a great community. And I've noticed that you guys are very, what's the right word for it? Very compassionate.
Intelligent?
Well, that was not the word I was...
Good looking?
Those were not on the top of my list, but I'm sure they were somewhere on the list.
I'm just trying to help.
No, but y'all are very sensitive to the needs of folks that are calling in with a problem. And I've watched folks that called in that didn't have the ability to speak because they were going through some operator relay, and they were struggling to get their word out, and you guys kept going, and eventually they got the words out, and y'all were able to work with them on the problem that they were calling in about. And
there's actually a little more to that story. His name is Larry, and I think he has severe cerebral palsy. I'm not quite sure what his problem is, but Bruce was actually able to engage with him. Bruce Turner, one of our co-hosts, was actually able to engage with him offline and brought him into a Google Hangout and with video and so forth. And absolutely, you could tell he just was thrilled. I mean, it was just a heartfelt moment to see him enjoying himself that much, because, you know, days aren't a whole lot of fun when you have to deal with those kinds of issues.
I can't imagine. Nope. Nope. I can't imagine. But that was just one example to me of the character of the individuals on that show. And I teased you guys about being old, but I really think it's just being sage. That's a 4-letter word for old. Yep.
Well, no, you found out you're the same age we are, so you kind of shot yourself in the foot is what really happened.
That's right. Well, no, I knew I was the same age. I knew that going in. That's why I could say it and not worry, because I knew I was just calling it on myself. Not that everybody thinks I'm younger than I really am. That's
right.
One of those things. I lie about my age. Well, let's talk about some specific audio problems. If you can let me toss you a couple softballs to start with, and then we'll get going on it. And anybody out there, if you're watching live and you're in the chat, pitch some fastballs at Mike when it comes to audio issues. I had somebody contact me the other day, and they wanted to do a webcast of a wedding. And they had a camera, and they had a PC, and I guess they had some way to hook it up to the internet remotely. And so they hooked up the camera through some adapters to some coax cable, and I think they were doing a test stream. And they were surprised that there was no audio in the stream. And that's all the information I got, at least on the first run through. How would you? What advice would you give to them?
If that's the first streaming opportunity you've had, boy, that's really starting. That's a glutton for punishment, because that's a very difficult thing to do.
It is.
Because if you hire a commercial videographer to video your wedding, the really good ones are going to have wireless microphones that are going to be hidden on the bride. They're going to be hidden on the groom. They're going to be hidden on the preacher. Each one will have their own wireless microphone. They will not try to use the same one. These microphones, the ones that the pros use, are anywhere from $800 to $1,600 a piece. They can go up even higher than that, but they are commercial grade units. And it takes some time to know how to conceal these. But if you think about it, you also have to have, like we're talking room mics, you've got to be able to hear the organ when it plays. Or if there is a string quartet, you have to have a microphone in that vicinity without really messing up the shot or being too obtrusive to the people attending the wedding. To get really good quality sound. I mean, my experience with weddings, ideally, is that you would record multiple channels of audio. It all depends on how you're going to record it. If you're just going to stream it, then you're going to have to do everything in real time. That means you're going to have a mixer. You're going to have multiple microphones. You're going to have someone operating the audio mixer in real time. You cannot let the camera guy work on the shots and just set up a mixer and leave it, because if you go the cheap route and have just the microphone sitting 6 feet away from the preacher and the bride and the groom, like a lot of people do, if that's the only way you can get it done, then you're going to have someone writing gain on the mixer, so that when the bride says, "Do you take this man?" she says, "I do." You've got to be able to pot it up, and you have to be ready for it. And you need to understand a little bit about your equipment. I mean, a lot of people will look at, and I don't know if this is going off track from your question, but I think it helps in terms of equipment selection. And they'll say, well, I want to pick up everything in the room, so I'm just going to use an omnidirectional microphone. An omnidirectional microphone means that it picks up in all directions like a ball around itself. Theoretically, it's not perfect, but it's pretty close. An omnidirectional microphone picks up everything around it. That means it picks up the coughing in the congregation. It picks up the people walking behind the pulpit. It picks up everything. It creates a really hollow sound. So that's why there are microphones called directional, or in our case, cardioid, hypercardioid, supercardioid type microphones. This microphone that I'm speaking into now is a cardioid microphone. What that means is it picks up only, and I say only, that's a subjective statement, but primarily in front of it. And that is, I tell people to take this microphone and think of it as a flashlight. And as a flashlight, the pickup range is where the light shines, which means I want this microphone shining directly at my mouth, not my nose, not my throat. That's going to be the ideal quality pickup. Now, having said that, getting back to the wedding, I don't think too many brides are going to let you put a microphone like this in front of her face, in front of the groom's face, or in front of the preacher's face and have 3 of these high LPR 40 microphones pointing at them. Of course they're not. So you have to then try to come up with something that's doesn't look quite as bad, and you have to be very, very careful about recording the levels. Now, again, going back to think about what the audio should be at a wedding. And I guess you could spend all day on this, but even if you have in the wedding, if you have, say, just to make the illustration easy, you have 2 cameras. You have one that shows like the back of the preacher's head and the faces of the bride and the groom. But you have a second camera at the back of the church that shows the whole congregation, and it shows them standing there, walking down the aisle, and so forth. What do you want to really hear during that shot? You don't want the audio to switch with that shot. You don't want to be listening to the organ where it sounds up close and personal. And then you switch to the shot at the back of the church, and now all of a sudden it sounds like the organ's next door. And that's what happens if you use the audio following the video. So normally, in my experience, what you do is you set up your audio at the front of the church, and then whatever shots you use are just whatever the shots are that you use. But you make sure you get the speech from the bride, the groom. If you have a vocalist who's singing off to the side, there needs to be a microphone over there. I mean, it's a very, very tough thing to do, to record a wedding. And all I would say to anyone who has not done it before is that you'd better practice a couple of times before you do it. And I don't mean on someone's wedding. You might even have some family or friends go over to the church with you and you play with it, because it is very, very challenging to do it, and to do it well.
Well, and it sounds like a wonderful gift to give a young married couple, but if not done
if you can't hear what they say.
Exactly. Nothing but frustration for Grandma, who was lucky enough to find the right feed to begin with. Yeah.
Now, having said that, a thought I just had, and this is I think is a good one. If you're new at recording weddings, then let me recommend that you get a piece of equipment, an external recorder, like one of the Roland RO5s, RO9s, maybe the Sony PCM-M10 recorder, and that you set it aside and have it recording the audio up front, whether it's with the built-in microphone or a second microphone that's not quite where it needs to be. Set it up and just set it on record and leave it. However, if you're recording the wedding, which you should be, if you're recording if you're recording the audio, the built-in audio, whatever it is from the camera, the webcam, at 48 kilohertz, then you need to make sure that the digital recorder is set for that same bit rate, which would be 48 kilohertz. Do not record video at 48 kilohertz and then record audio at 44 kilohertz and expect the two to fit together. Because I've tried it, it doesn't work. There are supposedly software programs that will make it work. I'm willing to bet that people who say it will work really haven't tested it that closely. I hope I'm wrong, because you can get into real trouble.
Well, that's more than I knew. Gee whiz. One of the things that was certainly in my background, coming out of somebody who took a lot of photographs and then switched from photographs to video. Again, audio wasn't on my radar, but I wanted a moving image, and I took whatever audio came with the camera. As we moved from that, kind of recorded video/audio combination, and then we moved to streaming, or something like what we're doing here, where we've got multiple cameras involved, multiple audio feeds involved. We really have to divorce audio and video, and they become two separate tasks that, yes, we want to be in sync with each other. We want them to complement each other, but they're not the same thing anymore. And they have to be, and somebody like me or you or Amnon or whoever has to develop some expertise on both sides of that equation.
Think about a news conference where, or particularly where maybe a person of interest is moving from point A to point B. You will see a bunch of cameras following him around, and you will also see a lot of guys with microphones on fish poles. And if you will notice that during this presentation, this guy is talking, you can hear him talk, but maybe some point during the presentation, you might get a second shot that shows how big the crowd is while the guy's still talking. So there's only that one audio source, but the video, as you're saying, can disconnect from the audio and give you a lot more interesting shot than just having a single camera with audio at one point. It's all in technique that has to be developed over time. And in a lot of things, and I'm no video guy, I'm an audio guy, but a lot of things that I've noticed is that once people hear them the first time, makes sense. I get it.
Right.
It's not that complicated, but it's maybe just something you haven't thought about.
Another question, and this is a Tom question. I'm not going to pawn this one off on somebody else. You mentioned kilohertz, which I guess is a measurement of the speed of an audio signal. How would you describe it? And then tell me about 48 versus 42 versus 96. What are we talking about there?
That would take a long time.
Oh, come on.
Give
me the second grade version.
I'm going to try to give you a capsule of it because it's mixing a lot of technologies in that question. To begin with, back in the old days, sound was measured, a frequency of a tone was measured in cycles per second. That is, if you look at sound, it's a sine wave, and that is, it goes up and down, up and down. The electricity in your home is 60 hertz in the United States. It's 60 cycles, in that it goes to the positive voltage and negative voltage, one cycle, 60 times per second. So it's a sine wave. That's why when you hear noise in your audio, this hum, you're really hearing 120 hertz, which is a harmonic of 60, but it's actually 60 hertz in your home causing that noise or that sound. I keep saying Hertz because somewhere along the way, Hertz is the guy who was a major scientist somewhere along the way. Franz Hertz or something like, I don't remember his name, didn't really pay that much attention, but someone decided that it would be appropriate to name that unit of measurement after him, Hertz. It's actually a guy's name. That's like capacitors are measured in farads after Faraday and so forth. So, I mean, it's just an honorary thing, but it's cycles per second. Now, getting back to what I was saying, audio, the typical audio range is 20 hertz to 20,000 hertz. That is a nominal number. People say, what does nominal mean? Well, that means you make it up. That means that Tom might be able to hear 20 to 22 or 20 to 12. I might be able to hear 50 to 10. But the range, the audible range, is generally 20 hertz to 20,000 hertz. On the internet, AM radio is probably closer, say, to 80 hertz to 8 kilohertz, 8,000 hertz. FM goes to 15,000 hertz. So those are the audio ranges that you're trying to relate to when it comes to internet audio. Now, the difference is that I've been to this point talking all analog. Whenever the digital world hit, things changed. And I'm not going to go into a bunch of digital theory for two reasons. Number one, I don't remember it. And number two, I don't think anybody would care to hear it. But that being said, let's talk about MP3 files. Everyone's familiar with an MP3 file. And if you may have noticed that an MP3 file can be encoded at 16K, 32K, 64K, 128K, 192K. What does all that mean? What it means is that is the sampling frequency, the digital sampling frequency that was used whenever the audio was converted from analog to digital. Boy, that's a simplified explanation. Here's what the takeaway is. The takeaway is, at least theoretically, 64K audio sounds better than 32K audio. 128K audio is better than 64K audio. It gets a little more confusing because now you add in the stereo component. People say 64K mono or 128K stereo. Well, for MP3, it's not a one-to-one correlation, but I'll leave it at that for now. Generally speaking, most people are satisfied with 128K stereo audio if it's an MP3 stream or an AAC stream. So what does the 128K mean? It means that is the clock speed that the analog to digital converter was running at whenever the audio was encoded digitally for use by the internet or by the digital player. It does not mean that your audio will go to 128,000 hertz. 128K audio is probably limited at I think it's 20 kilohertz, and it's going to depend on the codec, which is the device that's used to interpret the digital data. But bottom line is that most people will be satisfied with 128 kilohertz MP3 audio. Very few people can hear difference above 192K. I think the highest encoding rate for MP3 is 320K, which if you're going to do that, you might as well go with wave, which is uncompressed. So that's way off on a tangent, but generally more is better, but at a cost. And that cost is that if you have someone on a slow connection, and if you have 192K audio, you're going to be streaming audio at probably half the bit rate that you're streaming the video. So now the video may suffer, or the video and the audio may suffer together because the person viewing the stream doesn't have enough bandwidth, like on a phone.
Good example.
So don't use any more than you need. And if you're streaming, like Amnon has a 24/7 stream for Stitcher and some others, and as I recall, he's streaming it at I think at 16K. Well, if you listen to that on a big speaker, it sounds terrible, but if you listen to it on a phone, it sounds pretty darn good.
And I've listened to it on a phone, and it sounded pretty darn good. All right, well,
but he's saving bandwidth and making it listenable to more people by using that low bandwidth. If they want the high bandwidth feed, they can still get it.
Right.
So.
Right. All right, couple questions out of the chat room. Jan is asking, would you be able to do lower audio rates for a talk show compared to a music show?
Well, isn't that really a snobby question? Because there are people, I won't call his name, but he is there are people who would refuse to listen to an audio talk show that was not recorded at least at 128K. And he claims that others are equally as snobby, and I don't think so. In my opinion, if you're going to do monaural audio streaming with MP3 streaming, 64K is pretty good. I mean, you're not streaming symphony orchestras here. So again, you have bandwidth considerations with regard to mobile phones. I mean, the bandwidth situation was getting better for a while. I mean, when it started out, people were trying to listen to, and in fact were listening to audio and trying to watch video on dial-up. Okay, so broadband becomes more widely available. The YouTube generation hits, so that people have to have the bandwidth to watch YouTube and to hear those. So once that happened, now all of a sudden the pressure eases up a little bit. We can get away with higher bit rates, and that therefore we can broadcast higher quality, both audio and video. Then all of a sudden, mobile phones come along. Now we have iPhones, Android phones that have the ability to do audio and video streamed. But unfortunately now you have oversold bandwidth with AT&T and Verizon, and now you have data caps. So the question of audio, what's the best? Well, the best audio that you can get to be practical is probably 44.1/48K wave audio. That's like a CD or better. But that doesn't make any sense in a streaming world. So now we have to get back to what's practical.
Oh, hold on a second. You said 44/100?
44.1.
Okay. And that's what we're streaming at. That's the sample rate that I'm using right now.
That may be the sample rate, but that's not the bit rate.
The bit rate is 96.
I hope you're not streaming at 44.
Boy, it'd be nice. No.
Yeah, but it'd be wasted.
But the bit rate is 96. Is that
okay? Right, because it's compressed.
Okay.
The sample, don't get into sample rate and bit rate and all that, because I'll say something wrong because I don't pay much attention to it. And it really gets into quantizing theory and a bunch of other stuff that sounds impressive that I really wouldn't be able to say without looking it up.
Fair enough.
But bottom line is that 96K, in my opinion, I don't recall whether you're streaming in stereo.
Nope, mono.
All right, 96K mono audio is pretty darn good. It's going to have a really good sound to it. I would argue that it may even be overkill, but it's not going to hurt anything as long as people aren't saying, "Wow, your video is really choppy. I can't listen to this because it's chopped up and it's because they have a slow connection."
Well, one of the things that I've done, and Decast is great because they allow me to do it, is I'm streaming 2 video feeds. One is a 480. The other is, I think, 160 or something like that. So folks that don't care to look at our pretty faces up close and in great detail can switch to the lower quality feed if they have a limited internet connection, but they're still getting a very decent audio feed, which is really, video's not important.
Well, I mean, you're laughing, but to some extent that's true, because if all you're doing is looking at a couple of old guys sitting there looking into a camera talking, you tell me which is more important.
I agree.
So, but I think the ultimate solution at this point in the year 2012 is what Andrew Zary and Suncast are doing, and that is they have a stream that when you log into their website, you can pick, and I don't know how many there are, but it's low, medium, high quality. Which one do you want to do?
Right.
Mark Johnson and Vance Willis are doing the same thing. Do you want to watch the SD stream? Do you want to watch the HD stream?
Right.
So what they do is they are programming for their audience. They're trying to determine what do they need to reach the most people. And at this point in time, multiple bandwidth streams seems to be about the option. Now, having said that, Computers 2K Now, again, we have different objectives than Andrew does. We have different objectives that Mark and Vance do. So ours is, in essence, a fairly low bit rate stream, in that we're not trying to do HD. We're doing everything in 4:3 SD, the video, and the audio is at a reasonable rate. I don't remember what we're using. But if you can't watch Computers 2K Now because of a bandwidth issue, you're not likely to be able to watch YouTube either.
Right.
There are going to be some people who can't, and that's really too bad because it's a great little show. But we're trying to hit just below the middle, I would suggest. Amnon says we're doing 64 by 480 with 96 on the audio, and I think our audio is stereo, but I'm not sure. I don't remember. Why? And the question's going to come up, why do you do stereo on a talk show? And the answer is because many people in talk shows will have theme music that is in stereo, or they might play a video from YouTube or from Vimeo or some other source that has relevant audio in it. That audio is in stereo. This is a stereo world. Your TV is in stereo. Your telephone plays music in stereo. It is a stereo world. Can you get by without it in many cases? Yes, but everything you see at the professional level is stereo.
So I ought to redo my system and set it up for stereo and have the right channel be you and the left channel be me, and so it appears to be coming from those two areas on the screen.
No. And you would be shocked at how many people do that when they're first learning how to use their equipment. They think that's neat.
I did think that was neat, but that's okay.
No, that's not the way it works at all.
So I just do 100% on both sides?
Correct.
Okay. All right. Well, scratch that idea before I even got it out of the box. That's no problem.
Well, what's really funny is when people first start podcasting and they want to use Skype to do guests on their podcast, a lot of the recorders, like Total Recorder, which is one that I have, has a telephony driver built in, which allows you to record Skype as well as yourself on the same computer. Well, one of the options that it has is that it will put you and the Skype caller in different channels and record it in stereo. That way, when you go back to edit your podcast, if you want to, you can edit each channel individually, because you might be talking and I reach over here and sneeze, and you could actually go into just my channel and mute it during that portion when I sneeze. Then whenever you mix it all back together in mono, then that sneeze you might still hear some of it, but it's 90% gone. So it makes a little higher quality product. But I noticed, I hope he's not watching or listening, but a buddy of mine, when he first started learning how to do it, he released a podcast where he was in one speaker and his caller was in the other speaker. And you say, well, hey, that's kind of neat. Why not do that? Well, the reason you don't do it is because what if someone's listening and they only have one speaker set up, like through Skype or something, where you only have one channel that is connected. So now you only hear half the conversation. It just doesn't make any sense.
Well, another great idea shot down. That's okay.
All right, well, that's two. We've got to go for three.
All right, here's the last one. About 2 years ago, there was a guy in the VidBlaster forum that shared a way that he had to use his audio mixer. He was doing sports broadcasting, and he used the audio mixer for the announcers, and he picked up the field audio. But he also used the exact same mixer to communicate with his camera guys, and had a separate mic coming from the director into the mixer, and then a separate line out of some kind go into the camera guys, and he would mix in a little bit of what the announcers were doing so that the camera guys got the background, but the background audio from the announcers. But their main purpose of getting audio was to get audio from the director so the director could communicate with the camera guys. And he did that all on one mixer. Mm-hmm. How in the world would you do that on one mixer?
Well, I'm sitting here with this PreSonus 16.4.2.
Yeah. But that thing's, 5 feet wide.
It's trivial to do on that one. So the real question is not how you do it on one mixer, but how do you do it on one small mixer? Do you know what mixer he was using?
No.
Right. So first thing you ask is which mixer was he using? If you were to use a Behringer or a Mackie, I will assure you I could figure out a way to do it. And the reason I say that is because one of the guys that I consulted with about a year ago is a guy who does a car talk show out of Florida. He is a very sharp guy. He wanted to set up a broadcast studio in his shop, which he did. And,
Bobby Likas.
No.
Oh.
And
different guy out of Florida. Okay.
No, I don't even remember his name, but he wanted to set up his own studio, and he had already purchased some digital hybrids and some very expensive equipment, but he didn't know how to set up his mixer. But what he had to do, the way he wanted it to work, is he was sending the audio back to the station on what's called a blue box, which we won't go into that. But the benefit of that blue box is that the guy at the station could actually talk back to him over his earphone. So the question was, how could I sit here right now and talk to you, and say somebody else in your studio who, if you had someone operating your equipment, would be able to say, okay, Mike, shut up, enough on that. And it comes back in my earphones, but doesn't go out over the stream. And using the same mixer that Amnon has, which is the Behringer 2442, we were able to work out a way where the audio would come back into his headphones through the return feed, through the blue box. And it really was quite simple to do. But it depends on the capability of the mixer. And you need to be able to, the more aux sends, the better. The Behringer 502s, 802s, they're very, very limited. They're great for what you pay for them. But in terms of doing neat stuff, you're going to be very, very limited unless you get a really nice mixer. I have a little Scoop It site at MikePhillips.me that talks about equipment and techniques for webcasters and podcasters. And I've got a little sarcastic post there where it's a picture of a 32-channel Behringer mixer. And I think it says something like, do you think this is overkill for podcasting? And I said, the answer might surprise you, because I know that, like, Vance Willis bought a 16.4.2 PreSonus mixer. They're $2,000 a piece. when we were over there, I was there right after he got it, and he said, "Boy, I don't think I'll ever fill this thing up." I said, "Yeah, it's a nice mixer." Well, a couple of months later, I noticed he bought a second one and actually wired them together because he ran out of inputs. So you're never going to need less inputs. You're always going to need more. You're always going to need auxiliary sends. So before you buy a mixer, if you're going to do integration with Skype, like Leo Laporte does with his Skypeosaurus computers, each computer needs its own auxiliary send so that you can create a mix minus signal, which is beyond the scope of this discussion today. So.
Yeah, considering that I'm still struggling to get that dialed in myself. Yeah, we'll have to get you back on and we'll talk more about that. In fact, that might take a whole session where we can do some prepared videos or something like that and show plugging things in.
Yeah. Well, I'm hoping to do that. I've got, I want to take this PreSonus and do some YouTube videos where I talk about that very thing and about how it's done. And even if you don't have a PreSonus, the theories are the same. Jace Rossi has actually posted a video on YouTube about mix minus. I don't know what to tell you to find it, but it's very helpful. Jace Rossi, and I apologize for not having a link to it, but it's the kind of thing where you may have to watch it 3 or 4 or 5 times before you finally get it, but that's very helpful. Charles Campbell wants to know what is mix minus. That's a good point. Mix minus means it's an audio signal. It's an audio feed that includes everything minus the signal or the machine that you're feeding it to. Now, I know that sounds confusing, but let's just give it by example. Let's say that this computer that I am using to send audio and video to Tom, that obviously I have audio coming from him into my mixer, and I have audio coming from my mixer sending to him. But the minus means that I don't want the audio that I'm getting from Tom going through my mixer and going back to Tom. That would be an echo. So a mix minus is an echo breaker, is all it is. And that is that I am sending him a clean audio signal and he's sending me a clean audio signal. Neither one of us is feeding each other's signal back to them. With a mixer, it's easy to get that loop. And so this is the way you avoid that loop.
So are you doing a mix minus to me right now?
I am.
That's why you sound so good.
I might be able to break the mix minus. You want me to see? I don't know. I don't want to start twisting things while we're live, but all I'd have to do is turn the right knob, and I have to reach over here too far. And Skype may, in fact, mute the echo, which Skype does have its own echo cancellation, and it works most of the time, but not all the time.
Got a question.
If you use a mix minus, you don't ever have to depend on Skype's echo cancellation.
Gotcha. And I'm going to get that worked out. I'm going to get it.
You had it worked out.
I had it worked out, but then I had a hum, and I couldn't get rid of the hum. And now that you've told me how to get rid of the hum, you just have to know the words. That's the difference.
Right.
All right, here's a question and I'm appreciative to the time that you've allotted me, and so I don't want to go over time. But there's a question that says, Mike, how can I handle the problem with extreme differences in audio levels? I do sports streaming with radio mics for the players, and sometimes they shout very loud, and sometimes they whistle, and I can certainly understand that. Pitch you that fastball.
You're not going to like the answer, but 80% of what you have to do has to be manual. Someone has to be writing those faders, watching those microphones. And when you're looking at NASCAR, when you're watching sports on television, someone is sitting there with his or her hands on those sliders operating those channel faders, because it is a very, very imperfect setup because there's so much variability there. There are 2 issues. Number one is you have to make sure that on a wireless microphone, you make sure that you have the gain set correctly, because if you get a loud, really loud sound into the microphone that the gain is cranked up too much already, all you're going to get is distortion, and there's nothing you can do at the mixer to correct it. On the other side of that is if you turn the gain down so low that you have to crank it way up at the mixer, now all you're going to get is a lot of noise. So it's an imperfect situation. There are the more expensive wireless mics do have compander and expander and expansion and all sorts of audio level control circuits built into them to try to deal with the problem. But those are Band-Aid approaches. They are not absolute fixes. Now, having said that, Tom has heard me rail about this before. People will tell you, fine, go get a gate limiter compressor, throw it on there, and you won't have a problem. And that's nonsense. And I'll prove it to you. Let's suppose that you have this compressor, which it does exactly what it says, is if it's too loud, it compresses the audio to try to maintain a uniform level. But let's take the example I just gave you. So you have a wireless mic out on the field. The coach yells louder than you've ever heard him yell before. The gain on the wireless mic is set so high that all he does is distort. And when you get into distortion, that distorted signal comes back to the mixer. You can have all the gates, limiters, compressors, equalizers, expanders. You can have everything you want on that mixer, but you will not take out that distortion. You're going to have a distorted signal when that happens. So what I would suggest is that, and Amnon would be the first to tell you that I rail about this, do not use gate, limiters, compressors until you know how to run your audio. Because unless you get it approximately right, that gate limiter compressor is not going to solve the problem for you. And in fact, it can even mask the problem. If you listen to Computers 2K now, and I don't hold it up as being network quality. We haven't spent $500,000 on getting the audio like one of the major networks would have done. But for what we're doing, I think it sounds pretty decent. And the only compression you're going to hear is the little junk compressor built into the Behringer mic channel. And there's another story about that. You don't want to overuse that because if you have any background noise, that compressor will actually bring up the background noise when you're not talking. But that's another topic.
Well, I knew you were going to get into gates on that one. Excuse me, I could see that one coming.
Gates are very useful devices. They are excellent. I've got one sitting right here.
And
you see this?
Notice it's not connected.
It is not connected. But what this is a DBX 1074 quad gate. It's just a gate. I mean, it's not a gate limiter compressor. It's just a gate. I mean, this is a $600 piece of equipment. And the reason I'm evaluating it is, and by the way, the microphone I'm talking through right now is going through a gate. Because gates can be useful when they're applied correctly. The problem is that most gates are terrible. The best ones I've found are made by DBX. The one I'm talking through is made by DBX. It's a DBX 286 mic processor. This is the DBX 1074 that I'm evaluating for another application to find out if the gate circuitry in this 1074 is as good or better than the gate in the 286. The gate in the 286, which is a $200 unit, is the best I've ever heard. It's better than the gates I've heard on $2,000 and $3,000 pieces of equipment. So I highly recommend that, but we could talk about that at another time. But all that being said, a gate does not eliminate background noise. If there is noise in your room when you talk and that gate opens up, you're going to hear your voice plus the background noise. What the gate does is it prevents a buildup so that if you've got 4 microphones open in the room with one person talking at a time, now instead of the background noise times 4, you have the voice plus the background noise. Second person talks, the first one stops, you still have that same background noise, but it's times 1 instead of times 4. That's the easiest illustration of where a gate I think has the most usefulness. So they are useful. And limiters, compressors are very useful when they're used correctly. We experimented with one to try to, for another reason, but we experimented with a compressor only over at Computers 2K now, and Amnon's room has the air conditioner running in the background. We added the compressor in there, and we turned it on and lasted about 3 minutes. I mean, it was totally unusable for very predictable reasons, but it was helpful to see exactly how these things work in the real world.
So I'm not going to go out on eBay and buy the cheapest gate I can find and expect that it's going to be the silver bullet for my problems.
I have several recommendations, and they're just my personal opinion. You're welcome to take them or leave them. If you're going to buy a USB XLR microphone, get an ATR 2100, which is Audio Technica. If you want to get a really, really nice microphone, get one of these, which is a Heil PR40. Yes, Leo Laporte uses one. I used mine before I even knew who Leo was. If you're going to get a gate for your microphone, get the DBX 286S. It's $200. It has some other things on it, including gating, including compression and enhancement. Don't use all that junk. You don't need it. I only use it for the gate. Someone in chat is asking or commenting that there seems to be a bit of compression on my audio right now. And the answer, Martin, is no, there's not. I'm going through Skype to Tom, and Skype does act like a filter and does things to the audio. Sometimes it's better, sometimes it's worse. But no, I am not going through any sort of, the DBX can compress, but the compression is turned off.
Well, and who knows what happens to Mike's audio when it gets to me. I mean, we've got a little squirrel in a cage over here. Yeah, that's right. That's right. Oh my goodness.
Keep it simple, and people thank me so many times when they finally get over the shock that you don't have to buy every piece of equipment on Craigslist that's available in your neighborhood to have a good quality presentation. The simpler, the better. Keep it simple. Once you have mastered your audio, once you're really comfortable, once you know what your levels are going to be coming off the field, once you know what the optimum setting is for your wireless microphone, once you know what these levels coming in, you know what's even more important than this, Tom, and I don't think I've said this to anyone yet because I don't know how you do it. Once you develop the ear for the audio, and that is, I can sit here right now, if I were doing the switching instead of you, and we had 4 or 5 people here, and one of the audio levels was low, I wouldn't have to look over to the VU meter and see that it's not kicking up very much. I would immediately be able to hear it. I'm trained to listen to that, and that's not good, bad, or indifferent. It's just it happens with time. I think it's what they call the 10,000 hour rule. You're an expert once you've done something for 10,000 hours. I'm way ahead of that number when it comes to audio. So I can even, for example, during Computers 2K Now, whenever, and you probably can too, someone will be talking, maybe Steve from the UK is talking, he's a little bit low. I'll say, Amnon, Steve's a little low. And Amnon will look over the meter, and sure enough, he's not peaking on the meter quite as high as he normally should be. So it's just something that you have to develop over time.
Well, folks, there you have it. Chapter 1 on audio with video. And we're going to have to get Mike back. There's no doubt about it, because we are plumb out of time. And I know that there are a bunch of folks that have tuned in to hear these ancient Mayan secrets for optimizing your PC. And I would be...
Uh-oh. Well, yeah. Maybe you need to do that and then edit all my part out.
Well, fortunately, we're not limited by time, but I do have this sort of general hour. And I know you've taken time out of your workday, which I really appreciate, to come on, and so I want to respect that. Folks, stick around. We will get to the ancient Mayan PC secrets, as well as some closing comments. But Mike, I really want to express my appreciation to you, not only for coming on the show today for 50 minutes, but for the hours that you've spent helping me get things where they are today. And I'm not anywhere close to where I hope I will be, but as I look around my studio and I can see the changes that you suggested, and I can hear the difference as I made those changes. And these are not expensive changes. $30 for some freight blankets hanging on the wall, a piece of Scotch tape to take an old windsock off another mic and put it on this mic in order to cut down just a little bit more of the ambient noise. And then little things, if you're doing your show out of your home, crank down the AC an hour before you start the show, and then when you start just before you start your show, crank it up where it's not going to come on during the show, and so you won't have that extra wind noise in your room, or if your AC unit is right next to the window like mine is, you won't have that extra noise. Make sure your cell phone's on silent. Make sure your dogs are not expecting the UPS driver to arrive. I mean, that's a dead giveaway that you're not in a professional environment.
I think it's funny here. Martin says that Mike's dynamic range is about 6 dB, so something's controlling it. Well, that's me. I'm a 6 dB kind of guy. I only talk within 6 dB of between the Skype does do some audio processing. Unfortunately, it's not always repeatable. Sometimes it's worse than others. It's very possible that my feed to Tom is too hot. It may be that if I pulled it down 2 dB, that my dynamic range would actually go to 8 dB.
And it may be that I've got you too hot on my end.
Or maybe Tom's got a gate limiter compressor on me on his end, and he won't admit it.
Yeah, that's it. You caught me. You caught me. Mike, I want to do one of these sometime and use the Zoom process instead of Skype, just a one-on-one chat, and see if we've got a difference in audio, a difference in video. And I bet we might find a difference. I mean, there might be a good use for that. Folks, if you haven't discovered Zoom yet, it's a neat replacement for Google Hangouts.
Zoom.us.
Yep, there we go.
And by the way, before we get off, there have been some good questions here, and I don't mind answering questions. I'm glad to do it, and the easiest way to reach me is by following me on Twitter. And my Twitter is @MC Phillips, PHILLIPS, @MC And if you put that there, if you follow me and want to send me a question, that's fine. I don't have quite as much time for one-on-one help as I have had in the past, but if I have the time available, I don't mind giving you my advice for what it's worth, and you can take it or not take it.
There you go. Mike Phillips, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Glad to have you.
Glad to be here.
And as we close out the show, we're going to go straight to those ancient Mayan secrets for optimizing your PC for speed for live video production. Hi there, this is Tom Sinclair, that VidBlaster guy, with another VidBlaster tutorial. Today we're sharing some ancient Mayan secrets on ways to speed up your PC and optimize them for live video production. And as you probably already guessed, they really aren't ancient Mayan secrets. They probably really came from Egypt. But anyway, let's see. Let's start out with number one. And some of this may be pretty basic for you, and if so, that's great. But for others of you, this may be, major revelations. And if that's the case, then I'm glad that it'll be helpful for you. Let's first look and see what kind of things start off in your PC when you start it. And so I'm going to go to the Start menu and type in msconfig, and that brings up the system configuration utility that allows us to see what starts in our computer when we start it. And anything that starts, see under this Startup tab, anything that starts will be things that use CPU cycles. So we can see, oh my goodness, look, there is just a long list of things that start when we start our PC. And if you just bought a brand new one, your list may be even longer. So let's make this a little bigger so we can see what it is. And we're just going to go through and take out the ones that we don't think we're going to need. Microsoft Mouse and Keyboard Center, we'll keep that one. IntelliPoint, I think that has to do with the mouse, we'll keep that one. The Audio Manager, we're going to keep that. The Osprey Capture Drivers and Utilities, we're going to take that one out because we've already loaded that. The Blackmagic Streaming Server and Check Version PCI, we're going to take out because we're not using our Blackmagic card today. Google Update, we're going to take out. Skype, we're going to take out. Catalyst Control Center, we're going to leave. QuickTime, we're going to take out because we don't want that starting when we start our PC. Logitech Camera Software, we're going to take that out. We don't want that starting when we start our PC. Another Blackmagic, Apple Push, Adobe Reader, and Acrobat Manager, we're going to take that one out. Dropbox, I want to leave that one because I like to use my Dropbox. And something called PowerReg. Not sure what that is, so I'm going to leave it for now, but you can see we've changed our list quite a bit, and I'm going to apply those and click OK. And these processes, that what we just took out, will not take effect until the next time we restart our PC. All those things are loaded right now. So what we want to do is restart, and then we'll come back and all those will not be started, and so they won't be stealing CPU cycles. Great idea, I think. You can do the same thing. Let's go back into that. MSCONFIG config and press enter. And we can do the same thing on the services tab and take out services that we don't think are necessary. You notice some of the services say that they're stopped. Let me zoom in a little bit on that so you can see there. Well, Zoom's not working today. Let's try again. There we go. Some are stopped, some are running. Some of the ones that are stopped because I stopped them. Others were already stopped when I saw the PC, so we'll just have to live with that for now. But that's on the Services tab. And then let's see if we can make this go full screen again. There we go. And we'll click OK. Now the other area that can make a big difference, and that is on the Control Panel. So we'll go into Control Panel, and we'll select System and Security. Now your control panel may look a little different from this. If it does, just navigate your way to System and Security. And then we're going to go to System. And then in the left-hand corner over here at System is Advanced System Settings. So we'll go to Advanced System Settings. And we'll click on the Advanced tab. And we'll check the first one, which is Performance, Visual Effects, Processor Scheduling, Memory Usage, and Virtual Memory. So we'll click Settings, and we've got all these choices down here. Well, I've already done this, but I clicked Adjust for Best Performance. Now what this will do, and you'll notice it immediately as soon as you do it, we'll click OK here, and we'll get out of that. You'll notice as soon as you click Adjust for Best Performance that visually your windows will change dramatically. They won't be as pretty, they'll go back to the classic look. But it's the prettiness that takes up CPU cycles. And think of your PC like a NASCAR racing car. There is not a CD player in there. There's not a lot of foam padding. There's not even an airbag. It is stripped down and ready for speed. And if you're streaming, you really want to strip out all the non-essential functions in your PC. You don't want virus protection. That will slow you down. There are lots of things that could be running in the background that could be stealing valuable CPU cycles. And if you're dealing with a marginal processor, you want all the CPU cycles you could possibly get. Hope you'll tune in to our weekly show, That VidBlaster Guy, Tuesdays at 3 p.m. Eastern. I'm Tom Sinclair, That VidBlaster Guy. See you later. And I'm Tom Sinclair coming back to you live if you're watching us live. And threw that together at the last minute today. Had intended to add some more information, and I appreciate the chat room popping in with going through and add and removing programs, because definitely, even with a brand new PC, it can come loaded with all sorts of crapware that just get in the way. And if you find that you end up deleting a lot of programs, or if you've got a lot of old videos and you transfer those somewhere else, go ahead and defrag your hard drive, and that'll help speed it up a little bit too. And if you get a sudden bonus check in the mail, I tell you what, one of the slickest things to do is to get one of those solid state drives and make that as your main drive in your computer. Number one, it boots almost instantaneously, but all your other software will run quicker. I think both Tiger Direct and Newegg have got 120 gig SSDs on special today for $60. Holy cow. Don't know about the quality of it, so you'll have to do your own investigation, but that is a great opportunity to speed up your system. That doesn't even speed up your CPU, but a lot of times the hard drive can really drag things down. If you're doing sports broadcasting and using instant replay, you can benefit by having a second drive, even if it's not an SSD drive, and let that second drive be either a data drive to save your broadcast on, or let it be a scratch drive to let the instant replay store its files there temporarily. And we'll get into that in another broadcast. But folks, it's been my pleasure to be with you today. It really is a treat. I appreciate those of you that tuned in live, and those of you that are watching us on our YouTube channel. We are on Tuesdays, 3 p.m. Eastern, thatvidblasterguy.com. We'd love to see you there. And shoot us an email if you have any questions. It's tom@thatvidblasterguy.com. Oh yeah, and by the way, I'm a VidBlaster reseller. I guess I should have done full disclosure on that one earlier. But if you're interested in VidBlaster and you want good support, I would be delighted to count you among my customers. There's a link on our website, thatvidblasterguy.com, to the store, so you can go buy it in the store. If you're not sure which edition you need, shoot me an email, or shoot me an email. I'll send you my phone number, and we can talk about it. There's no better way to know exactly what you need than to talk to somebody that's made all those mistakes, and believe me, I've made all those mistakes. So we're going to call an end to today's show. I'm Tom Sinclair, that VidBlaster Guy. It was really a treat to be with you. See you next time.